Hey y'all, it's Laura and welcome to day 26 of my Scraptember Video a Day Marathon. This is a collaboration with the Scrappy Sisters and Christy's Beautiful Life with our fantastic special guest Janet Fritz, along with a lovely group of ladies joining in every single day, and they're all linked down in the description box below, so please go and check them out. For today's layout, we do have a lovely sketch, which you had at the very beginning of the video, and today's prompt is mixed metals. This is another one that I find a little bit tricky and don't do terribly often in my scrapping, just because I tend to lean toward gold anyway, just as a general rule. But overall, I do really like a little bit of silver and gold together. I do think it works together if you have a wide enough color palette on your layout. I think it works. And so one of the ways that I'm going to make that happen is I'm using this beautiful Bella Boulevard Chloe collection, which has this gorgeous, gorgeous floral in it that has an abundance of colors. It not only has your typical pastels that I tend to reach for, but also some earthy tones with some browns and some deep oranges that I think really help it work well with both gold and silver, because we have both those deep warm tones and also some cooler tones as well, because there's some grays in there mixed in. And so I think that really works. So one of the things to keep in mind with this collection is I don't have a lot of it left. For one thing, I'm working with literal scraps on this one. It's another one of those collections that I am determined to finish off. It is actually a cat themed collection. I do not have cats. I picked it out simply because I thought it was beautiful and it was pet themed, and I was determined that I was going to use it for my dogs because I have two female dogs. They're in the picture there on the top right, and this is Gracie to the right of that photo and Emma to the left, and they are my sweet puppies. So this second photo down here at the bottom left is of me with the two of them camped out on the floor behind me. This is pretty typical. I'm sitting in my office in this photo, and they like to just hang out right behind my chair and keep me company when I'm in my office. And funnily enough, they sometimes like to go chase the kids away from my office. If they come over and start pestering me too much, the dogs will kind of herd them away. Nose them a little bit to get them moving, which I find incredibly funny. Unnecessary, but funny. So I do have this really nice journaling strip that came from a Doodlebug cut apart, and I believe it was a birthday collection. And I've been wanting to use these with this collection. The colors match beautifully, but these journaling spots are huge. And so I did decide to go ahead and replace one of the photos that in the sketch exists over on this left side, and instead put this big journaling spot instead. And I am going to cover up that bit that says birthday at the top. Makes it super easy to use for other things because you can just cover that right up and it becomes whatever you want it to be. It's a journaling spot about the puppies instead of birthdays. So don't look at your embellishments and think, well, I can only use that for birthdays, or I can only use that for cats. I could only use that for Christmas. Not at all. You generally can find ways to use even heavily themed product for a variety of layouts. So don't let it limit you too much. Now, at this point, I had quite a bit of this sticker sheet left and was just determined to go ahead and use up as much of it as possible. So here I'm using up one of the border stickers. I'm going to bring in another border sticker on the other side, really just trying to use up as much as possible and bring in as many colors as possible so those mixed metals blend in quite nicely. Now, the tricky part here was the fact that I had a gap in my papers behind this journaling spot, and I needed to figure out how I was going to cover that up. Initially, I thought that I was going to use some of these larger sentiments that came with the Doodlebug Spring collection, and I figured having one of those right there would cover that right up, no problem. It didn't really work out that way. So instead, I'm going to end up putting a floral cluster there, and it does a nice job of just filling in that gap. So just think creatively when you have a awkward gap or a mistake even on your layout. Just encourage yourself and empower yourself to think creatively of how to fix it and not panic. Don't panic. Anything can be fixed. Anything can be covered up. Don't worry. This gap in my papers looks glaring right now, but once I cover it up, you won't even notice it's there. Now you'll see that I used that little banner piece to cover the birthday on the journaling spot, therefore making it work for whatever I like. I'm playing with these bits and pieces to see which fit in where. There's a lot of sentiments in this package that I haven't even touched yet, and so I'm just trying to get as many as I can on the page. Now I actually could have used that "so tweet," I think it was what it said right there, and see here I'm trying to get in one of these larger sentiments to fit. That was my initial idea. It doesn't end up working, but it was an interesting idea, and I think I just didn't have the right phrases to tie in with the layout. So it was worth a shot, but now we're going to go ahead and dip into the cut aparts and the little bits and pieces I have left from the Chloe collection, as well as the sticker sheet, pretty heavily into the sticker sheet even, and try to get as much of it used up as I possibly can. Another thing I was thinking about is I have gone ahead and used some black paper to kind of outline this long journaling spot and draw a little bit of attention to it. So I'm going to pop little pieces of black around the page to help that tie in, to make that make sense so it's not drawing too much attention to itself. I don't want it to draw more attention than the photos do, but I did want to make sure that it has its own presence on the page. Now this particular style I thought was really interesting. I don't normally keep my elements or important pieces like the photos and the journaling separated, and so I did try the best I could to bring them together in the center as much as possible, and so that's why mine leans in a little bit more than the sketch, is because that just makes me more comfortable to have my important elements together. But I love this concept of having two separate panels with their own purposes. So that was a really cool idea to try. And like I said, I'm always experimenting. I'm always looking for new designs to try. This was really fun. It did challenge me a bit to see how balanced I could make the layout, because obviously this right panel is bigger and more significant than the left panel, but I almost think that that's a good thing, because if they were equally weighted, I don't think it would draw your attention to one more than the other, and I think it would feel a little bit more overwhelming. Whereas because both of my photos are on the one panel, and I'm very clearly putting the emphasis on that panel, your eyes go there first. Take in that whole panel and those photos, and then drift across to the journaling, which is definitely the order I would want that to happen in, because for me the photos always come first. Almost always. It is so rare for me to choose the story or some element on the page over the photos. I want the photos to be your first prerogative, and anything else is really just a bit of an add-on, an embellishment, if you will. But I am creating some clusters on here. I've got a cluster up here on the top right around this little banner piece that says how tweet it is, which is quite cute. I have a small cluster here between my photos at the top of the photo of myself, and then to the left of the photo of the dogs. I have another little cluster at the bottom of these photos. So we have 3 clusters across this right side panel. This left side panel is also going to have 3 clusters. I of course have the one cluster that fills in the gap where the papers didn't quite meet, and then I have up at the top a small cluster at the title of the journaling spot, and then I created a 3rd cluster at the very bottom of the page, kind of covering up and camouflaging the candy that was at the bottom of the page with some florals. Now I did decide to go ahead and fill in this gap with some of the extra paper, simply because that bright yellow was popping through behind the hearts, and I really wanted to move these hearts up a little bit, and by filling in that gap it gave me a little bit more flexibility to cover up the top seam and not worry so much about the bottom seam, because if you can't see the top seam, you're not looking for the bottom seam. I hope that makes sense. Just felt like I said seam a lot just then. So pulling in some fussy cut pieces just to add around to these clusters, kind of flesh them out, fill them up, and give them a little more of a presence on the page. These are just some circles from a piece of pattern paper. I encourage you to look at your pattern papers as opportunities for more embellishments. Embellishments can be very expensive, and particularly if it's not a collection that you want to have and hoard a lot of, I would keep your embellishment buying very limited and try and see if you can fussy cut some embellishments instead. It'll save you some money, and it also will save you some space in your stash. It also helps you use up the collection a little bit faster. So now we've gotten to the end of this washi roll, which, yay, is a big surprise and something that hasn't happened very often in my scrapping. But I'm going to add this little bit of gold here behind the banner and looking for opportunities to get some of those mixed metals onto the page. So I'm going to squeeze in just a little bit of gold washi here, there, and everywhere. Some of these have like glitter on them, so I had finished off the gold foil washi up the top right corner. Now I'm bringing in some gold glitter washi to get a little bit more of that metallic on the page. Quite often, if I don't pull out the prompt for this layout, I will forget to use it. So I try to remember to do it before we hit the end of the video, but this is what happens when I get to the end and realize, oh, we haven't done any metallics yet. And decide to go ahead and bring in some gold washi to get that metallic started. So now we have some gold on here. I think I did end up replacing this with the gold glitter washi simply because it wasn't quite matching what I had just added. So I did decide to go ahead and instead replace this with the gold glitter washi so that it's cohesive from left to right. Now you will notice that I did repeat a lot of elements on both panels. So I had that yellow panel, I have the floral panel, and then I have the scallops along the side. Even though they're different colors, it's a very similar shape. And so they reflects from left to right, and it works really well to feel cohesive. Again, sticking a little bit more of this gold glitter washi underneath of my photos to get a little bling in there and also give them a little bit of a shadow. This is pretty much most of the gold that I put onto this layout. I think I did some Heidi Swapp Color Shine at the end, but I chose to use silver Nuvo drops on this one so that I could get that mixed metal effect. I do like it when I can squeeze washi onto a layout, however, because it's not something that I tend to reach for super often unless I do so intentionally. And so having it on this layout made me feel pretty good about using a little bit of it up. Now I've got the silver Nuvo for my controlled splattering, and then I'll bring in the Heidi Swapp Color Shine for my uncontrolled splattering. And we're just going to add that around my clusters and around the outsides of the panels. This is going to be pretty lightly done because it doesn't need to be heavy. There's not a ton of space to fill in with this splatter, so I'm going to keep it very simple. You will notice I'm using a color cardstock background on this layout. Don't do that terribly often, but I do have some color cardstock to use up. That's it for this one, guys. Until next time. Bye, y'all.